Let's get logical. These are the two most logical signs, Aquarius and Gemini, and this is the biggest gift that I can imagine. The planet of vitality and the planet of luck and expansion together, joining forces in the two most logical signs. So as you're setting intentions on Wednesday during the new moon in Aquarius to be logical, setting your intentions to see the broad view, to engage in the community, by the time we get to Thursday, it's time to ask some big questions. It's time to ask some big questions. And listen. I want to listen. I want to hear the answers. That's what I want. I want to hear the answers. But I'll tell you what, when you give me your answers, guess what's going to happen? I'm going to ask more questions. I'm going to keep asking questions until it makes sense, until it makes logical sense. And I'm not going to stop until it makes sense. And I hope that you do the same. I hope that whatever questions you have for whatever it is you're dealing with in your life, I hope that this week you are asking questions and you're not stopping until you get an answer that makes sense, that is logical. Welcome to the Weekly Transit, your guide to understanding the current planetary and astral alignments. Together, we'll explore how to harness these cosmic frequencies, empowering you to reach your highest potential as you navigate the days ahead. I'm your host, Scott Tajarian. Welcome to the Weekly Transit. This is the week of January 27th to February 2nd. I am so happy and excited to be here with you, so grateful to be here with you. So much to get into in this episode, a lot to get into. I want to continue the conversation about these fires in LA because as more information comes out, it's just creating more thoughts and more insight. And I really don't know anything, but I share these stories because I want to stimulate your mind. And especially with Pluto in Aquarius, it's important for each of us to go through this rebirth, this transformation of what it means to be in a community. I'm also going to talk about David Lynch and Bob Uecker, a couple celebrities who passed away on January 16th. I want to get into their astrological codes, do some reflecting there. And then we've got 8 transits to cover this week, including Mercury and the new moon in Aquarius. Mercury transits into Aquarius, as well as the new moon occurs in Aquarius. So the theme this week is detachment. If you didn't have a chance, this past Wednesday, I met up with Delisa Hawking, and we got into the inauguration, covered some of that, just the astrology of everything that's going on. And Delisa, as you know, I've interviewed her here on this podcast. She is really fun to connect with and to get her psychic insight and intuition on all these different topics. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Ace, Alicia Easter, which I released last week as well. So providing a lot of content. I hope you are enjoying, and I hope it gives you ultimately, like my whole objective is to give you a deeper understanding of this ancient language, the language of astrology, so that you can apply it to yourself. And in applying it to yourself, helping you understand who you are so you can accept, appreciate, and love the divine, unique miracle that is you. So the theme of the week is detachment. And the detachment is due to the new moon and Mercury transiting through Aquarius, into Aquarius. And Aquarius is the sign that represents detachment. It's ruled by Saturn, the god of wealth and time, the planet of restriction, responsibility, hard work, achievement, authority. It's ruled by Uranus, the primordial sky god, the planet of revolution, rebellion, innovation, independence, the unexpected. There's a real harshness to this Aquarius energy, which comes with the detachment, where people can feel very unemotional, very cold. Another frequency of Aquarius is cool. It's chill. So it's not good or bad. There's good and bad in everything. Like when you think of the wind can be a cool breeze on a hot summer day, that's the air of Aquarius. It can also be a hurricane, like the hurricane type winds that were experienced in these fires in Los Angeles that burned so much of the city, so many homes, so many businesses. So it's all how we're working with the energy. But at the core of Aquarius and any air sign is communication through the exchanging of ideas. But the harshness of this sign is reflected through the planetary rulers. When you think of the myths of Aquarius, Uranus and Saturn. So Uranus is a Greek god, Saturn is a Roman god. In the Greek myths, Saturn is known as Kronos. And Kronos was the son, half-brother of Uranus. See, it gets weird, it gets harsh, it gets strange. Gaia, Mother Gaia. Mother Gaia got down with her son, Uranus, and as one could imagine, when the mother beds the son, things get a little weird. They got weird for Uranus. They had children. Of course, Uranus is very jealous of his children, who are also his siblings, because he wants that mama love for himself. And so what does he do? He kills his children. Well, Mother Gaia doesn't like that. She doesn't want her children to be killed. So she hides them away. And one of them, Kronos, rises up and castrates Uranus, his father, severs the family jewels and throws them into the ocean, and out bubbles up Aphrodite, aka Venus. So when you look at the language of astrology, it quite clearly tells the tale of Venus and Uranus, because Uranus and Venus are essentially the same symbol. Venus is a circle of spirit on top of a cross of matter. Uranus is that same symbol flipped upside down, a circle of spirit beneath a cross of matter with a crescent of receptivity on either side. So when you think of the castration is the removal of those two crescents of receptivity. Or maybe that's all that's left of Uranus, and then Venus is the rest of it. So it's harsh. There's a harsh energy and frequency to this Aquarius vibration. But it can also be very enlightening. It helps us see what was always hidden. It's now coming to light. And I'm going to just say this up front. I'm not a historian. I don't know all the facts. I'm just a person who has a passing interest in history. and is deeply obsessed with astrology. And so when I think of Pluto and Aquarius as it is right now, I can't help but think about the last time Pluto was in Aquarius, which was during the American and French revolutions. That was a harsh time. Think of people getting beheaded in the town square. That's brutal. The guillotine. Even in the United States, though, this was brother versus brother. Father versus son. Not everybody was wanting to be a part of the American Revolution. Some people were happy with the British rule. And so there was great intense conflicts that occurred during this last period. What caused these conflicts? Well, information came to light that caused the people to want to revolt against those who were in authority over them. Much like how the authority, Kronos or Saturn, revolted against the planet of revolution, the father, Uranus. So it's like Uranus was the father until Saturn took over. Kronos took over. So there was a revolution in relation to authority. When one experiences a trauma, it can be hard to think. It can be hard to think rationally. If you see somebody decapitated or castrated, that's a trauma. Whether it is wherever you are in that circumstance. If you're the one getting decapitated, if you love the one getting decapitated, if you hate the one getting decapitated, if you are the one decapitating, you are all experiencing the trauma. This fire that's occurred in Los Angeles is a trauma. It's a traumatic event. It doesn't matter what your relationship is to this trauma. You could be living on the other side of the world and have very little knowledge of experiencing what this trauma is. But it does create a ripple effect across our earth. And the trauma creates confusion, illusion, deception. So isn't it interesting that the sign that follows Aquarius is Pisces? Aquarius is the sign of revolution. The revolution is a trauma to the norm. And in the wake of that trauma, there is confusion, illusion, deception. I've been thinking a lot about Pisces because there's just been some moments this week where I have just been on the floor. And I can't really pinpoint where the feeling is coming from, but it just feels heavy. Has anyone else felt this heaviness? Does anyone else feel like they are suffering in some way, but can't really pinpoint the nature of the suffering, where it's coming from? I've been thinking a lot about Pisces because, as we've talked about at length these past few weeks, there's 3 planets in Pisces in the North Node. Venus the goddess of love and beauty, the planet of relationships, which is exalted in Pisces. Saturn, the planet of restriction, limitation, hard work, achievement, authority, the planet that castrated his father in Pisces. Neptune, the planetary ruler of Pisces, in Pisces. The North Node, the soul's purpose, the karmic pathway of the soul, in Pisces. We are in the age of Pisces. The age of Pisces began at the birth of Christ. And doesn't it make sense? The symbol for Pisces is the fish. The symbol for Jesus before the cross was the fish. I will make you fishers of men. I turn water into wine. Pisces rules water. Pisces rules wine. Pisces is the sign of faith. Jesus said, the man who has the faith of a mustard seed can move a mountain. Jesus was all about faith. Those who believe in Jesus talk about their faith. But what was Jesus also about? Suffering. Suffering. I talked last week about Mel Gibson and brought up how I've only seen The Passion of the Christ once. That's all I could handle. That's all the suffering I could take. Because watching Jesus Christ get dragged through the streets, flogged, bloodied, wearing a crown of thorns, carrying the burden of the cross that signifies the sins of man. It's 2 hours or 3 hours, however long the film is, of constant suffering. Beating us over the head that Jesus suffered. Jesus suffered for our sins. He was pure. He was perfect. And he paid the greatest price. Not only his life, but the suffering that he experienced. For you, for me, for everyone who's ever walked this earth. That's a lot. Pisces carries the weight of the 11 previous signs. Pisces rules the feet. The feet carry the weight of the entire body. So with 3 planets in the North Node, in Pisces, the energy is heavy. So if you feel like you're suffering and you don't know why, or maybe you do know why, whether you do or don't know why, part of the reason why you're feeling what you're feeling is because of all of this Piscean energy. It's heavy. It's heavy. But there's also planets transiting through Aquarius, which this week we'll get into further. Pluto, the Sun, the new moon, Mercury. So that is creating the detachment to the suffering. And with the detachment and the suffering, the trauma, there's confusion, there's illusion, there's deception, but we have to dig into the facts. What's being said out there about these fires? A lot. The politicians say that they want to help the people rebuild their homes, their businesses. A lot of people have lost their jobs. So how does it come back? Well, there's a giant toxic mess that needs to be cleaned up. That's going to take months. That's going to kick up air that is contaminated. Now, if you're somebody who lives in one of these neighborhoods and by some miracle of imagination, your home is still standing, can you go home? When can you go home? And when you are allowed to go home, is it safe for you to breathe the air? Aquarius, air sign, fixed air. The air is not moving now. It's just coming up and sitting there at the foot of the hills where these communities are. Pacific Palisades, Altadena. Well, no, you don't want to breathe that air. So what happens if you're somebody who's renting a home in Altadena and your landlord isn't going to clear the smoke out of the home? The insurance company isn't going to clear the smoke out of the home. The city isn't going to clear the smoke out of the home. You now have to clear the smoke out of the home. And then you go home. And there's toxic dust all around your home from the cleanup that's happening. You got to find a new place to live. So who's really going home? You're somebody who owns a home in Altadena, Pacific Palisades. Your home's still there. Is the insurance company going to pay your mortgage or your rent for 6 months, a year, however long it takes for the air to be clean? And what does that mean that the air is clean? The insurance company may say that the air is clean, but you may say it's not clean. What happens then? Does it make sense to go back? Does it make sense to rebuild? For anyone who lost a home, say you're somebody who lives in the Pacific Palisades and you bought your home in 1975 for $110,000. And now the insurance company comes in and says, we're going to give you, I don't even know, because I don't know any of this. I'm making up numbers, but let's just say $1 million. Is $1 million enough to rebuild your home there? Maybe not. Materials are more expensive now. There's an overabundance of construction, so construction's coming at a premium. These guys aren't looking for jobs, they're turning away jobs because there's so many jobs. So it's more expensive to build. Not only are the materials more expensive to build, but the work is more expensive to pay people to build. So you're a landlord that doesn't have a tenant. You're a homeowner that doesn't want to come back. You're somebody who owned a home who's not there, who can't afford to build. Or even if you can afford to build, maybe you're not coming back because the air is so bad for so long that you've got to pick up and start your life over someplace else. And then comes the corporate developer with their giant bag of money, and they offer you another $1 million on top of the money that you got from the insurance company to buy your land. And before you know it, there's an entirely new development of homes and people living there. People who maybe don't own the homes. Now it's not single family homes, it's condos and townhouses. Property tax goes up. Rents and real estate value goes up. Who's making the money? The corporations and the government. Now, maybe it doesn't play out that way. Maybe the people of these towns band together and the insurance companies do the right thing and the government makes sure that the insurance companies do the right thing and everybody's singing Kumbaya as they cut the ribbon to the new town that's just like the old town but even better. But I doubt that. Because the reality, the harsh reality is, who has the money to really cover this cost? If it's the government, then who's paying for that? The taxpayers. If people are homeless, if economy is down because people aren't working, where's that money coming from? How are the taxes going to pay for that? If it's the insurance company, well, they've lost their ass. We're talking tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. So really, who really has this money? The corporate entities. And then it sends you back into a really dark perspective. Like, why did this happen? Because if the people that live there aren't moving back there, and the whole town has been transformed into something that it wasn't before, maybe it's a little bit like it was before, but it's not the same. And over 50% of the people living there didn't live there before. They all moved away. You have to ask yourself, why did this happen? Was it just really a natural disaster? Maybe. Maybe not. We don't know how the fire started at this point. And even when we know how the fire started, do we believe the story that they are telling us? What we know is that a giant reservoir in Pacific Palisades was empty. Would that have helped in the fire? Well, when I've heard multiple stories of people staying behind and fighting the fire with a garden hose and saving their homes, you have to think, yes, it probably would have helped. So you have to ask yourself, why was this empty? So I did. I went on ChatGPT, I did some research, I asked, why was the reservoir empty? And I want to encourage everyone to go back and watch the film Chinatown, because that is a film that it's prolific. It's a film that maybe still has relevance to this day, because what has LA always been about? It's been about water. This is not a new story. If you know the history of LA, then you know that there's a few people in LA, the Chandlers, the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, they own the LA Times. They sold a dream, a fantasy to come to Los Angeles, but they needed water. So what did they do? They went to the Owens Valley and they posed as cattlemen, bought a bunch of land from unexpecting cattlemen, and they stole all their water. But before they did that, they sold the people of Los Angeles a bill of goods that said, we're going to bring an aqueduct from there. Once they did that, then they said, we're going to bring an aqueduct from there to LA. What they didn't tell the people of Los Angeles was that the aqueduct was going to end in the valley, where they were buying up land, pennies upon, the dollar, really cheap. It was just all orange orchards. So they bought up all that land because they knew that that was going to be the second part of Los Angeles, the San Fernando Valley. And they developed all of that. Taxpayer dollars, buying land from farmers on the cheap to build the city. So knowing that, understanding the history of that, is it totally inconceivable that there might be a grander plan in terms of the development of Los Angeles? So I asked, why was this reservoir empty? And long story short, this 117 million gallon water source, 117 million gallon water source was empty. Why? Well, it was under repair since February of 2024. So for 11 months, this reservoir was empty for repairs. So why did it take so long to start the repairs? Well, they were in a bidding war with different groups that were going to repair the reservoir, a bidding war. In November of 2024, a contract was finalized for approximately $130,000 to repair the reservoir. $130,000. Now, I want just to remind you why I'm bringing this up. We are living with Pluto and Aquarius. Aquarius is the water bearer, the person that invented the jug, that carried the jug from the stream to the village. So do not be surprised during the next 20 years when there are continual issues surrounding water. Who it's flowing to, where it's flowing from, who owns it. I encourage you to read a book called The King of California. J.G. Boswell. J.G. Boswell. He changed the whole topography of California. There was a giant lake in the southern San Joaquin Valley that was bigger than Lake Tahoe. That's gone now because of J.G. Boswell. So it brings up a lot of questions about how we're living with the land and are we using the land correctly? And there's a lot of questions here, but we need to be aware of this so that we can rebuild the community the way that we want to rebuild it, in a way that's sustainable and supportive for everyone. Now, the reason why this $130,000 price tag on the repair for the reservoir, which was completely empty during this fires, is so shocking, because LADWP was seeking to get bids at $89,000 and they had to settle for $130,000. You know what the residents of Pacific Palisades paid in property taxes in 2023? This is just an estimation, but somewhere around $361 million. That tells you how much the real estate is worth there. So imagine you had something that was worth $361 million. What would $130,000 mean to that? Is $130,000 worth protecting something that is $361 million? I'd say, yeah. That's a pretty simple answer. But yet here we are. So was this politicians that were just negligent? Or was there something more nefarious going on? It would seem rather convenient if, when this is all said and done, these two communities are completely transformed into something that does not resemble what they were before in terms of the structures or the way the housing was developed. I mean, obviously, maybe there's some things that need to change to prevent fires. But if the residents are changing and too much is changing, it raises suspicion. Pluto in Aquarius is an awakening. Secrets coming into the town square. Secrets revealed. There's no hiding with Pluto in Aquarius. Now, reflecting upon David Lynch and Bob Uecker, if you don't know who these men are, I encourage you to look them up. Bob Uecker was 91 years old, and he was still broadcasting baseball games for the Milwaukee Brewers as of last season, 2024. He broadcast his last game in October of 2024. He was known as the funniest man in baseball. I knew him because of growing up. There was a show called Mr. Belvedere, and he was one of the stars of the show. This guy who was a backup catcher, played 6 years professional baseball, but was the announcer for the Milwaukee Brewers. He was massive Aquarius, Mars, Venus, North Node, Saturn, Mercury, the Sun. That's 5 planets in the North Node in Aquarius in the 3rd house. This is somebody who is certainly living his soul's purpose, which is why I think he lived such a long and fruitful life. To be able to do what you love for literally the entirety of your life. For 54 years, he was broadcasting for the Milwaukee Brewers. And he said for as much as he enjoyed being on Mr. Belvedere, and he was also famous for being the announcer in all the major league movies, which are hilarious from back in the 80s or 90s. He's like, when I was in Hollywood in the off season, I always couldn't wait to get back to Milwaukee and to start the baseball season again, because that's what he loved more than anything. So when I see somebody who's doing what they love for the majority of their life till they're 91, I'm like, wow, what did that guy do? Okay, he's living in his soul's purpose. So his soul's purpose in Aquarius. Aquarius is the community in the 3rd house, which is associated with the 3rd sign, which is Gemini, which is about communication. What was he doing as an announcer? Communicating, connecting, talking about this person, talking about that player, talking about telling these stories, listening, learning. He has a wealth of information. He was born with the moon in Gemini, so he had that support as well. The moon at 18 degrees in Gemini aligning with his North Node at 19 degrees in Aquarius, which was also conjunct his Saturn and his Venus. So he took his job seriously. He took listening very seriously. It's something that he worked really hard at, and it's something to say, like, what do they say about actors? The most important thing in learning how to act is learning how to listen. If you're just thinking about your line, then you're not connecting to the other person and it's not real. It doesn't, you feel that disconnection. You, the audience, can see it and you're like, they're not paying attention. Maybe you're not aware of it, but somewhere in your unconscious, you're feeling that and it's not resonating with you. So how does somebody who's a baseball player and a baseball announcer also star in a sitcom for 6 years and multiple sequels of a film called Major League? Because he's a master listener with great comedic timing. Aquarius is one of the great comedic signs because they are so cold and cool. They just cut to it. It's harsh, and that harsh perspective shocks people, that Uranus shocking energy, and people are like, oh my God, I can't believe that they said that, but I totally see it that way. Wow, that's cold, man, that's cold. And so he had a real tete-a-tete with Mr. Belvedere, the two of them. It's like the Odd Couple. You have this working class guy. He actually plays a sports writer and a sports announcer. And he's just like a blue-collared type guy. And then you got Mr. Belvedere coming in, into this Midwestern house. Mr. Belvedere is like high society, worked for kings and queens, and now he's somehow in this circumstance where he's like the housekeeper for this middle-class blue-collar family in Chicago. It's hilarious. But a great listener, Bob Uecker. A great storyteller. A very funny man. Moon in the 7th house, somebody who is really connected to other people and really feeling what they were feeling. And born with the ascendant in Scorpio. So something very mysterious about him. Something intriguing. Something intriguing. He was dealing with some tough transits during his passing. Saturn was squaring his moon, restriction to emotions. He was dealing with Jupiter squaring his Neptune, expanding that confusion or illusion. Chiron was beginning to square his Pluto. But there were also a lot of positive transits as well. So, I like to imagine that he went peacefully. And Mars was squaring his Uranus, peacefully and swiftly. So rest in peace, Bob Uecker. Thank you for all the laughs you gave me. David Lynch, someone else who's been an inspiration to me. Very unique individual as well. Bob Uecker was born on January 26, 1934 at 2:10 a.m. David Lynch was born on January 20th, 1946 at 3 a.m. So they were both born with Scorpio rising along the horizon because they were born, even though 12 years apart, 6 days apart, 12 years and 6 days. So, the sun is in a similar position, even though David Lynch was born with the sun at 29 degrees in Capricorn. Bob Uecker was born with the sun at 5 degrees in Aquarius. David Lynch was born with the moon in Virgo. So again, I talked about that last week with Mel Gibson, how he's a 6th house sun. And I said, he's got a great eye for detail. And I don't think that you can really be a great director. There's so many moving parts unless you have that eye for detail. And David Lynch being born with the moon in Virgo means that he was emotionally connected to focusing on the details, the nuances of the details. He was born with the sun in Capricorn, just like Mel Gibson. These men, both very committed to achieving their goals and ambitions. I watched a documentary on the making of Eraserhead, which was, I think, David Lynch's first feature film. And he said, one of the jokes was that there's a scene in the film where the main character walks through a door, and that's one shot. And then the next shot is him coming through the door from the other perspective. And he said 3 years went by between those two shots. But the reality of the film was it was happening in real time. But the reality of them making the film was it took 3 years for them to get from one shot to the next. Because they didn't have any money. But he didn't give up. That's the GOAT. I fell down a few ledges. Just got to keep climbing. Got to keep moving up. Keep climbing up that mountain. David Lynch, like Bob Uecker, was born with the sun in the third house. So that need, that ability to communicate, to be a connector, a conduit of information. Born with Scorpio rising on the horizon. And his films are very dark. Yet, like when you hear him speak, he doesn't seem very dark. He doesn't seem like a very dark individual. But his films are intense. Very intense. David Lynch was born with the North Node in Gemini in the 8th house. So that tells me that he is also somebody who is following his soul's purpose. Because his films were so dark, that's that 8th house Scorpio frequency. He was born with his soul's purpose in the house of death. But it was in Gemini. So he came to be curious about death, to be curious about the underworld. To be curious about seeking what is hidden and taking a light approach to it. Bob Uecker was here to connect to the community, to the group, the club, the organization, the Milwaukee Brewers, the city of Milwaukee, and to be a conduit of information. So if you were born with the North Node in Aquarius, in the 3rd house, Bob Uecker is a totem for you. If you were born with the North Node in Gemini in the 8th house, David Lynch is a totem for you. David Lynch, dealing with some challenging transits. Chiron was squaring his Saturn and Mars, the wound squaring his sense of authority and his courageous nature, his sense of courage, confidence. Mars was squaring his Jupiter, creating an aggressive expansion in some way. Those are just a couple examples. No way to really know what was going on. I wasn't there when they passed away. But I just want to thank David Lynch and Bob Uecker for their contribution to our Earth and to the inspirations that they provided me through their work. Now let's get into the week. That was a very long, extended intro, but I'm feeling good, and I hope you are too. Because, sit back, put the headphones on, and let's just dive into these transits. Or, hopefully you're just chilling out when I'm doing my monologue with the the fires and Bob Uecker and David Lynch and the suffering. I have empathy for you out there. I'm here to bring a calming voice into your auric field so that you feel inspired and moved and motivated and empowered. The first transit of the week is Mercury, the messenger of the gods, guide of souls to the underworld, the planet of consciousness, communication, and coordination, the god of merchants and thieves, transiting into the fixed air sign symbolized by the water bear Aquarius, where it will transit from January 27th to February 14th, Valentine's Day. Uranus, Saturn, let's look at those. Uranus is revolution, rebellion, unconventional, sleeping with your mom. Huh? That's different. Saturn, restriction, limitation, castrated. Uranus, that's some restriction. Can't have babies anymore. Can't father children anymore. That's the frequency that's coming to our mind now with Mercury transiting into Aquarius. We need to think of things differently. We need to take a different perspective. Stop listening to the mainstream. Start thinking for yourself. And when I say mainstream, I don't just mean CNN and MSNBC, Fox News, CBS, ABC, NBC. What I mean is also Instagram, TikTok, X. Whatever information you're receiving from all of these entities, try to receive a lot of different varying viewpoints. If you are delving into that area, which I don't recommend, but if you are, listen to conflicting viewpoints and then take some time to sober up from whatever you've been fed and then reflect it within yourself. Because when you've experienced a trauma like the people of Los Angeles have experienced, when the herd is scared, they're easy to move. If the herd is relaxed, it doesn't want to go anywhere. So you got to yell at it. You got to sick the dogs on them. You got to crack that whip. That gets the herd moving. So a lot of the information that's out there is meant to move the herd. So be very mindful of where you're moving or where you're feeling the urge to move. Don't be surprised if your mind is shocked during this period, January 27th to February 14th. And maybe what you're shocked by is your own thoughts. There may be nothing more shocking than your own thoughts during this period. Your own words, whatever it is you're communicating. I can't believe I said that. Is that insensitive? Yeah, it's really insensitive. Okay, well, Mercury's in Aquarius, and it's the sign of detachment. Sometimes we have to rip off the Band-Aid, and it might hurt. Ow! But we need to do that in order to put the healing salve on there. And the healing salve is the truth. And the truth is based in logic. What is the logical reason for why a city would choose to haggle over 89,000 to 131,000, or whatever the contractors were? Maybe they were saying 100,000. So they're haggling over $100,000 to repair something that is vital to the protection of the community. Vital. Like if you need a heart transplant, are you going to haggle over the price? It's life or death. Doctor says, if we don't get a heart transplant, a new heart in you within the next month, there's a 98% chance that you're going to die. Okay, well, I need to see if they can bring down that price a little bit. How long are you going to haggle for? You going to push to the 11th hour? To November of 2024? When it hasn't rained in 200 days? On the heels of one of the wettest winters in Los Angeles history? That's basically like saying, yeah, I'm gonna wait until the day before I need to have the heart transplant to decide if I'm gonna pay for what it's worth. What? That's not logical. That's not logical. So what's going on? What's the logical answer here? If the residents of Pacific Palisades paid $361 million in property taxes in 1 year. That's just 1 year. Where's that money going? I guarantee you, if the residents of Pacific Palisades knew this was going on, they would create a fund for $100,000 to get those repairs done a little bit quicker, so that they'd have the water that would potentially save their home. But they didn't know that was going on. They weren't paying attention. And these are the consequences. So Mercury in Aquarius is bringing logic to our mind. We're cutting through the BS. We're cutting through the bullshit. No, don't bullshit me on that. Don't bullshit me on that. I'm not buying into that story. I need facts and figures, and that's the clarity that I need. Don't blow smoke. I've been watching a lot of clips of George Carlin. They've been coming around through the cycle on the social medias. I mean, this guy is just the gift that keeps on giving. What a gift to our society. Because if you want somebody that cuts through the bullshit, it's George Carlin. Where was his moon? The 11th house. What's the 11th sign? Aquarius. That's right. Aquarius. George Carlin was born with Uranus at 10 degrees in Taurus, which squares his ascendant at 14 degrees in Leo. So sometimes he's really harsh with sharing his perspective. That Aquarius frequency, very harsh in sharing his perspective. I encourage you to watch some of his old stand-ups. The last time Mercury transited through Aquarius was February 4th to the 22nd, 2024. The time before that was February 11th to the 2nd, 2023. The time before that was February 4th to the 9th, 2022. And before that was January 1st to the 25th, 2022, when Mercury transited through the first 10 degrees of Aquarius before it retrograded back into Capricorn. So think back to these dates for clues on what could be in store for you this time around. Look through your old Instagram posts, your photos, your text messages, your emails, what was going on in your life between February 4th to the 22nd, 2022, February 11th to March 2nd, 2023, February 14th to March 9th, 2022, and January 1st to 25th, 2022. This is a revisitation of that energy, January 27th to February 14th. Now, if you were born with key astrological points or planets in Taurus or Scorpio, look out. You may be going through your own personal Mercury retrograde, where things feel a little wonky, they're tense. Maybe if you're born with planets in Leo as well. That's the opposition. The squares are more intense. Aquarius squares Taurus and Scorpio, but tension with the mind. You know, with Taurus, it's breaking you out of that me energy and really thinking about, let's not worry about my values and think about it from a logical perspective and how is this benefiting the group. For the Scorpio frequency, and this is not just Scorpio Sun, Taurus Sun, Leo Sun. It's you have planets most likely, or maybe, probably, in one of these three signs. Whether or not your sun's there, no. Look at the other planets. And if you're curious to know where this is happening for you or any other planets, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. I will give you insight to your astrological code, how to read your astrological code, and how to work with these cosmic frequencies to your benefit. But for those that were born with key astrological points or planets in Scorpio, your secrets are being drawn out. Maybe unwittingly, maybe you're resisting it, or maybe you're like, you know what? Screw it. I can't hide this anymore. I just got to say it. Is it uncomfortable? Yes, but it's more uncomfortable holding it in. So what are you hiding? Taurus is, what are you holding on to? What are you keeping that you need to contribute? Scorpio is, what are you hiding that you need to show? And the Leo frequency is, what are you making it all about you when it's not about you? It's about everyone else. Think about that. January 27th to February 14th. The second transit, Venus, the goddess of love and beauty, the planet of relationships, is concluding the first cycle here of its transit through Pisces. Early next week, next Monday, next Tuesday, it transits into Aries. We'll get into that in the next episode. But then it's going to retrograde back into Pisces. And on January 28th, Tuesday, Venus enters its retrograde shadow in Pisces. The mutable water sign symbolized by the fish, the sign where Venus, the goddess of love and beauty, the planet of relationships, is exalted in a position of power, because in order to be a good partner, you need to be empathetic to who you're in partnership with. You need to be compassionate to who you're in partnership with, but you also need to show yourself compassion. This is not about trying to fill someone else's cup with an empty cup or giving your last drink of water to someone else. You suffering along with someone else is not helping them. You can have empathy for them. You can have compassion for them. But if you're attempting to emulate the suffering of another, you're actually taking away from their experience. I didn't lose a home in these fires, so I don't need to pretend like I did. That's not fair to the people who actually lost their home. So I show compassion and empathy, but I stop short, or at least I'm trying to stop short, of experiencing their suffering in the way that they're suffering. Because it's not my suffering. So Venus transits into its retrograde shadow on Tuesday, January 28th. The retrograde begins on March 1st, when Venus is 10 degrees in Aries. Venus will get back to where it is on January 28th. It will get back to this same point, 24 degrees and 37 minutes. It will be back at this point in Pisces on April 12th. And then Venus moves out of its retrograde shadow on May 15th. So January, February, March, April, May. Really, it's the end of January, so we really got February, March, April. It's like 3.5 months. Just over 3.5 months, Mercury is in this retrograde shadow. And what's interesting about this, and we'll talk about this, we'll continue to talk about this as Venus transits into Aries, and then the retrograde in Aries. What's interesting about this is when Venus transits into Aries, it's going to be all about me and what I want from this relationship. So we go from these stark contrasts, right? From sign to sign, from Aquarius, which is very detached, the shockingly detached revolutionary vibe, to the suffering, the confusion, the illusion of Pisces, to I don't care about anyone but myself, Aries. And then we're going to go back into Pisces. So we're straddling these energies right now. We're really figuring things out. We're figuring out who we are as individuals. We're figuring out how we can contribute to society as the individual that we are. And we're delving within ourselves to find compassion for ourselves and empathy for others. It's an interesting soup. But really think about your relationships. Think about the give and take. Think about the empathy that's being exchanged or the lack of empathy that's being exchanged. Think about the compassion that you're feeling from your partner, from yourself, or the lack thereof. Who are you in the midst of all of this? What do you want? What do you want from your relationships? Where do you want to be by March 1st within your relationships? Where do you want to be by April 12th within your relationships? Where do you want to be by May 15th in your relationships? I encourage you all to take a time out, a pause during this period. Because relationships may feel tested and strained during this period. And because of that, there may be an urge to make up or break up, to make out or break out, to get together or to move on. And you might be doing yourself a favor by just, let's sit with the discomfort here. Let's sit with the discomfort of not promising myself for the rest of my life to this person I just met. And trusting that if it's the right person and it's the right relationship, we're not going to feel that pressure. And by the time we get to 6 months from now, we'll still be together. Let's also sit with the discomfort that I hate being in this relationship. I can't stand being in this relationship. Why am I with this partner? I need to get out of this relationship. Let's sit with the discomfort of what it means to be in that relationship. Of course, as long as there's no physical or mental abuse going on. Like, I don't want to encourage anyone to stay in a relationship where they are being abused in some way. But if your wife is driving you crazy, or your husband's driving you crazy, or you're super annoyed by them and they didn't clean the dishes and I'm so sick of them and whatever happened, it's like, okay, let's go within ourselves. Let's speak up for ourselves. Let's go within, learn about who we are, and then speak up and advocate for who we are. These are those moments where you can really ride the marriage vows, where it's in good times and in bad times, in sickness and in health, for richer, for poorer. This is a time to ride the highs and lows, and maybe make a pact with your partner during this period and say, listen, Venus is about to be retrograde. We're moving into the retrograde shadow, January 28th to May 15th. I don't know what's going to happen, but let's make a mini commitment to ourselves that whatever does happen, we're going to ride and die. Ride or die. We're going to ride or die. We're going to stick with each other through the ups and the downs. And when we're in the downs, we're going to remind ourselves of this moment. Whether we're reminding each other, or maybe it's like I need to remind myself that I just want to pack a bag and run for the hills and never return. Leave all my stuff behind. Oh, that's a moment where I'm sitting in the car and I say, oh yeah, remember that commitment I made to my partner? Where we were talking about Venus being retrograde and we're going to have buyer's remorse on this relationship. Okay, let's get out of the car, unpack our bags, and sit through this discomfort. On the other end of the spectrum, oh my God, I just met the person of my dreams. This is the most amazing person ever. I just know they're my person. I'm going to have sex with them. I'm going to have babies with them. I'm going to get married to them. Let's do it all now. I got to do it now, because if I don't do it now, then they may leave me like the other ones did. I got to lock them in. I got to lock them up. No, you don't. You need to sit with that discomfort. You need to sit with that inner suffering. You need to sit with that insecurity, that fear, and write it out. As Mercury transits into Aquarius, it forms that conjunction with Pluto. The messenger of the gods, the guide of souls to the underworld, forming a conjunction with the Lord of the underworld. Guide of souls to the underworld, Mercury. Lord of the underworld, Pluto. Joining forces in the sign of coming out of the closet. Aquarius. 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 Yes. We're coming out. We're dancing with our secrets in the public square. You look at these two symbols, they look similar to each other. They're both made of a circle of spirit on top of a cross of matter with a crescent of receptivity. The only variable is Mercury, the crescent of receptivity, is on top, symbolizing the antenna, exchanging information, receiving information, processing that information, and communicating that information to others. Whereas Pluto, the crescent of receptivity, is in between the circle of spirit and the cross of matter, symbolizing the transformation that occurs to the eternal soul in the world of matter. So we're going through a transformation of our mental process. This is from Monday to Wednesday, January 27th to the 29th, with the exact conjunction occurring on Tuesday, January 28th. This is encouraging you to transform the way that you communicate to the community, to the group, the club, the organization, the social network, the social cause. It's encouraging you to be more open to seeing the big picture, to broadening your perspective, to really recognizing that, you know what, my voice matters because it's my voice. And I don't even need to say anything other than that. My voice matters because it's my voice. Your voice matters because it's your voice. Every voice matters because every voice is unique. So when you open your mouth, like I open my mouth on this podcast, I have to think, what am I sharing here on the podcast that is unique to everything that I'm hearing on Instagram, X, social media? Because I don't want to be regurgitating information. I want to be sharing my perspective, which is why I don't really listen to other astrologers. Not that I don't respect them or think they're amazing. I'm sure there's a lot of other amazing astrologers out there, but I don't want to be parroting what they're saying. I need to share what I'm saying. What I need to be really careful of is hearing all the different stories that are going on. You know, like the people that are saying this about the fires versus the people that are saying that about the fires. The people that are saying this about Donald Trump versus the people that are saying that about Donald Trump. The people that are saying this about Taylor Swift and the Kansas City Chiefs versus the people that are saying this about Taylor Swift and the Kansas City Chiefs. What does that have to do with me? What does that have to do with my perspective? So in all the information that you're consuming, even the information that you're consuming here on the weekly transit, what does that mean for you? What does that mean for you? When you understand what that means for you, that's when you are singing your own song. Or maybe you're singing a song that I wrote, but you're singing it in your own unique way. This is about harnessing your voice and having the courage to speak in front of the audience, in front of the community, in front of the group. And that leads us to the new moon in Aquarius. The new moon in Aquarius, the first new moon of 2025, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5 is 9. The new moon in Aquarius, the first moon of 2025, this 9 year is at 9 degrees. The final degree of, or the final digit of the single digits. The final digit of the single digits. Means endings. It means endings. So, what is coming to an end to you? For you? There's two more new moons that are occurring at 9 degrees this year. the new moon in Pisces, and then the new moon solar eclipse in Aries. And of course, if you want to learn about how these new moons, full moons are affecting you directly, enroll in my moon cycle classes at theweeklytransit.com. There's a class this week on Monday and a class on Wednesday, the day of the new moon, which is occurring Wednesday, January 29th. It happens in the midst of the new moon phase. Usually I do the classes before the new moon. This one I'm like, you know what? Let's do it during the new moon. And we can all set our intentions as the community, the group, the club, the class, because that is what this new moon is about. It's about setting your intentions. It's about setting your intentions to contribute to the community. So what are you working on to contribute to the collective? What are you inventing? In what ways are you keeping yourself accountable within the group dynamic? By saying, well, this is my role. In order for our team to win, I have to play my part. And in what ways are you holding the group accountable? I'm not just doing this for fun. I'm just doing this for charity. I'm doing it because I'm getting something out of it. You got to be getting something out of it. And if you're clear about what you're getting out of it, then you need to be clear about what everybody else is putting into it, and they need to be held accountable for putting in what they have agreed to put in, just as you need to be held accountable for what you need, what you agreed to put in. So think, what would you like to invent? How are you being innovative? How are you being unique? This is about harnessing your own voice. It's about detaching from everybody else, detaching from all their ideas and focusing on your unique idea, and then reconnecting that idea to the group to see if it works within the group. But if it doesn't work within the group, you can detach it from the group and move on to a different group where it does work. But in what ways are you being more accepting of everyone's individuality? Recognizing that everybody is unique. Everybody has their own path. Everybody has their own perspective. And I don't have to agree with you to respect you. Like, I got into a tense exchange on Instagram with this individual who I wrote something, a comment on an account that I follow, and somebody went right at me. And I was immediately triggered because he called me bro or dude. And I'm just like, huh? Do I know you? Do I know you? I don't know you. So when you call somebody you don't know bro or dude, you are treating that person with disrespect. It was shocking to me. And we went on a long exchange, back and forth, back and forth. I'm seeing things from his perspective. I'm conceding points that he's making. He's not doing that for me. We take it to DM, the DM world, going back and forth. And he's making personal attacks on me. Well, you're very sensitive. Or, you're a fool for thinking this way. Or, just digs. And I'm like, wow, okay. All I'm feeling is disrespect. So as I'm feeling this disrespect, it's hard for me to really listen to what you're saying and appreciate it. So I just said, I wish you well, and ended the conversation. Thankfully, he didn't respond to that, and we can go our separate ways. But it really makes me think about this Aquarius frequency, because we've got to be able to engage with different ideas, different perspectives, perspectives that are going to shock you. And when you're shocked by somebody else's perspective, can you still address them with respect? So during this new moon in Aquarius, we want to set our intentions to find respect within the community. But to also really think about who you want to spend time with within your community, because Saturn is the god of wealth and time. So who are you spending your time and resources on within the community? Set your intentions to spend your time and resources on those within the community that at the very least respect you. Whether or not they agree with you, that's a different issue, but they need to respect you. Set your intentions to express your individuality within the community. That is your value. Your value is your individuality. And set your intentions to exert your independence within the community. That I don't have to go along with what you say. I can be myself. I can do things my own way. In the Palisades, they really tightened up the neighborhood because it's an evacuation zone. And they were letting people through to check on their houses. And some people went through, checked on their house, went in their house, locked the door and said, "You can't make me come out of my house. Go away. I'm an individual." Maybe that's extreme Aquarius. That people are wondering, what's going on here? Tanks? Armored vehicles in this neighborhood? Okay. Set your intentions to exert your individuality, because if you don't exert your individuality and your independence, if you don't express your individuality and exert your independence, and guess what? You're going to get bowled over. You're going to get pushed into the herd. Who's trying to push you into the herd? Don't get pushed into the herd. The herd ends up in the slaughterhouse. Better to exert your independence and individuality now rather than later. The sun, transiting through Aquarius, forms a trine, a supportive aspect with Jupiter retrograde in Gemini. Jupiter, the planet of luck and expansion, transiting through the mutable air sign symbolized by the twins, Gemini. The sun in Aquarius, fixed air, Jupiter in Gemini, mutable air. This is an air-air connection, a supportive aspect, a trine, occurring from Tuesday, January 28th to Friday, January 31st, with the exact trine occurring on Thursday. Thor is the Old Norse god known for Jupiter. So Thursday is the day of Jupiter, Júpiter, Jueves. Thursday, January 30th. This is helping expand your curiosity within the community. This is helping kick up ideas. I need to hear from you. What do you think of this? Can you explain this to me? Can you explain why a city would haggle over $100,000 to repair a dam that was vital to the safety of this community that has been decimated by the fires, when the community paid $360 million in property taxes during the previous year? Can somebody answer that question for me? That's the question I'm going to be asking. Let's get logical. These are the two most logical signs, Aquarius and Gemini, and this is the biggest gift that I can imagine. The planet of vitality and the planet of luck and expansion together, joining forces in the two most logical signs. So as you're setting intentions on Wednesday during the new moon in Aquarius to be logical, setting your intentions to see the broad view, to engage in the community, by the time we get to Thursday, it's time to ask some big questions. It's time to ask some big questions. And listen. I want to listen. I want to hear the answers. That's what I want. I want to hear the answers. But I'll tell you what, when you give me your answers, guess what's going to happen? I'm going to ask more questions. I'm going to keep asking questions until it makes sense, until it makes logical sense. And I'm not going to stop until it makes sense. And I hope that you do the same. I hope that whatever questions you have for whatever it is you're dealing with in your life, I hope that this week you are asking questions and you're not stopping until you get an answer that makes sense, that is logical. Uranus, the planet of revolution, the planetary ruler of Aquarius, goes direct in Taurus. Woo! Uranus in Taurus. Wow. Let's go back to March of 2019. What a different world we were living in. That was 6 years ago. That was 6 years ago. How different is the world from March of 2019 to now? Mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. Uranus has been sitting here at 23 degrees since December. And it's going to continue sitting here at 23 degrees until March. So December, January, February, March, Uranus is at 23 degrees. Not all of December, not all of March, but part of March, part of December, all of January, all of February. So roughly around 3 months at 23 degrees. What's at 23 degrees in your chart? In earth signs, water signs, fixed signs. The earth signs are Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. The water signs are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. The fixed signs are Taurus and Scorpio, which we mentioned, but also Uranus and Leo. Leo and Aquarius. So what's at around 23 degrees in those 8 signs? Taurus, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Scorpio, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. What's at 23 degrees or near to 23 degrees in those 8 signs for you? Whatever's there is going through a revolution. If it's a square, opposition, or conjunction, it might feel like a very uncomfortable revolution. If it's a sextile or trine, it might feel like, woohoo, yeah, things are changing in my life radically, amazingly. But for all of us, this is revolutionizing our self-worth and values, our relationship to the material. Whether it's Pacific Palisades or Palestine, people are going through a revolution of their connection to the material. What really matters? What really matters? Uranus entered its retrograde shadow on May 15th, 2024. On May 15th, 2024, Uranus was exactly where it is on January 31st, 2025, 23 degrees and 15 minutes. So what was going on in May of 24 that is akin to what's going on in your life right now? Or December? Or looking forward, February, March? In what ways has your relationship to the material gone through an overhaul? A revolution? Uranus began its retrograde on September 1st, at 27 degrees and 15 minutes. Uranus will move out of its retrograde shadow on May 17th, 2025. So on May 17th, 2025, Uranus will be exactly where it was on September 1st, 2024, 27 degrees and 15 minutes. Connect the dots. Connect the dots. What's the through line? What's the thread? But isn't it interesting? From May 15th to May 17th, May 15th, 2024 to May 17th, 2025, Uranus is in its retrograde shadow. 23 to 27 degrees. So really, you're looking at earth, water, and fixed signs between 22 to 28 degrees. Because we're thinking of this whole retrograde shadow period, which is 23 to 27. Going through a revolution. Of your self-worth and values. What do you want to see for yourself at the end of this revolution? How can you connect more consciously to your individuality through this revolution? The last two transits of the week involve Venus, both of them, and then Neptune and the North Node, all of which, Venus, Neptune, the North Node, as we mentioned earlier in the podcast, all transiting through Pisces. As Venus completes its first round of transits through Pisces, because Venus is coming back into Pisces from March 27th to April 30th. That'll just be the last 6 degrees, as we established earlier, with Venus transiting into its retrograde shadow on Tuesday. But beginning Wednesday to Monday, January 29th to February 3rd, that's when Venus transits into Aries, is Monday, February 3rd. So from Wednesday to next Monday, Venus is aligning in a conjunction with Neptune, the god of fresh water and the sea, the planet of illusion, deception, compassion, and intuition, the planetary ruler of Pisces, and the North Node, the karmic pathway of the solar soul's purpose, transiting through Pisces. Now, I don't know the last time this happened. I should have gone back and looked. Let me even see if this happened back in the 1840s when, no. Nope. So, yeah, so it's been several hundred years at the very least. The last time Neptune, Venus, and the North Node were all transiting through, or did it happen here? No, it did happen. Yeah, so this happened in yeah. It's for all the historians out there. Tell me what was going on between what was going on in January of 1858. Well, but wait a second. Venus wasn't there. So yeah, that didn't happen. This didn't happen. The last time the North Node and Neptune were conjunct in Pisces was January of 1858, but they were the only two that were in Pisces. So we have to go back even further. What's important about this is to understand that we're really digging deep within our own psyche here. We're digging deep within our own psyche. What's going on within your dreams? What's going on within your unconscious? Not just when you're sleeping, but when you're doing the dishes, when you're driving your car, when you're staring at a TV screen and your mind's drifting, or when you're reading a book and your mind's drifting. Where's it drifting to? What are you thinking about? What is the status of your relationships? Have you lost faith in your relationships? Whether it's a lover, a friend, a business partner. In what way can you reimagine the dream of your relationship? How can you be more empathetic to your partner, but also compassionate to yourself? Maybe it's through that self-compassion that will incite the empathy from the one that you desire empathy from. This exact conjunction occurs on Saturday, February 1st. What are you suffering through in your relationships? Do you feel misunderstood? Do you feel like you don't understand your partner? Whatever confusion you are feeling, just know that it's because of these transits. And hopefully, once Venus transits into Aries, you're going to have much more clarity in terms of who you are and in terms of who your partners are. But from Wednesday to Monday, self-care in relationships is extremely important. Care for yourself. And then once you feel like you've cared for yourself and you've taken care of yourself and you have the bandwidth, the energy to give a little extra to your partner, give a little extra to your partner. Maybe the dishes didn't get done last night. Nobody had the energy to do them. Show compassion. If you were the one who dirtied the dishes, ask for compassion from your partner. Ask for empathy from your partner. Today's been really long. I barely had enough energy to cook food, and I don't have the energy to clean the dishes. I'll get to it tomorrow. If you're the one who didn't make the mess and you have the ability, the energy, go clean the dishes. Give a little extra if you have the ability to do so. In that circumstance, maybe the person says that you're telling, like, I didn't have the ability to clean the dishes. The other person can either say one of two things. If you're the person that is receiving that information, you say one of two things. I totally understand. Don't worry about it. Or if you want to take it a step further, hey, I got you. I'll clean the dishes. It's all good. Don't worry about it. I have the energy to do it. This is about picking each other up. But you can't pick somebody up if you've fallen down. You got to pick yourself up first. So pick yourself up first. And once you're standing on your own 2 feet, help another person up who's fallen next to you. I hope this has been helpful to you. Thank you, as always, for your time, for your energy, for your focus in receiving the information that we're channeling through here on the weekly transit. And I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you for listening to the weekly transit. If you're curious to learn how these transits or any other transits may be affecting you, or if you're interested in learning more about your astrological code, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. This episode was produced by me, Scott Tajarian. Music written by Ben Leinbach from Listen Deep by Amber Herzog-Lyman. Wishing you all the best as you ride the planetary waves.